Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16th, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Housing Subcommittee will be conducted in person conducted via remote participation. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, in person, and for those who wish to do it remotely. So this is a Zoom meeting. For those not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of such recordings. So the town is recording it. I see the Edge is on. They might be recording it, and the Berkshire Eagle might be recording. So this is being recorded. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items may be listed, may be in fact discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. I see Jeremy, so let me bring him in. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
I forgot my headset, so let me know.
You missed the opening. I'm not going to repeat it. So I think you timed it well.
I heard that.
At least you got your head, so that's part of it.
Okay, so we're going to call to order the Housing Subcommittee. I just read the little blurb. I'm going to have roll call. Garfield.
Here.
Malcolm.
Here.
Jeremy.
Here.
And I am here. Okay, we're going to move to the approval of the minutes from January 24th, 2023. Any notes? I sent them ahead of time, so we all have them. I'm happy to put them on the screen if you haven't had a chance to review them, but I didn't see anything that stood out. Anyone else have any notes or changes?
I would have to abstain. I was not at that meeting, so I can't approve.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Garfield's abstaining. Malcolm.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
And I'm aye. So that's the approval of the January 24th minutes. Subcommittees, announcements, and statements. Garfield.
Nothing, thank you. Nothing yet.
Malcolm.
No.
Jeremy.
No.
No. Okay. And I don't have anything. Okay. Moving on to new business. So we're going to cover quite a lot here. And we have a presentation coming up this coming Monday. It's actually at 5:30 with the joint session of the Selectboard and Planning Board. So a lot of this meeting might be working towards that presentation. But I wanted to start out with the general housing plan worksheet that Malcolm kindly dove into and cleaned up quite a bit. And I shared that with the group. Obviously, I didn't get any feedback, but I wanted to bring that up, and I would be happy to share that and just go through it real quickly. Malcolm, if you want to explain anything, any changes that you've done or how you brought things up.
The numbers on the sheet are the same numbers that are on the other worksheet. So if you want details, it's on the other worksheet. And I added a column here for impact, and just put my own, or, I wouldn't say they're arbitrary numbers, but they're my numbers. And obviously, coming up with numbers on my own as opposed to the synergy of the committee coming up with numbers, you guys are going to come up with something different. That's not meant to be priority. So something with a lot of impact and low effort and low cost is probably something that should be done. Something that's a high impact with a high cost and a low, that maybe that shouldn't be done. So this isn't meant to be priorities, but the impact was just meant to say, how much would this thing directly impact, and I mean directly, impact housing in the town? And you'll notice that the planning board items actually drop down below, because the planning board items don't directly impact anything. All they do is enable something.
Yeah.
So that's not to say it shouldn't be done, but just to set to give you an idea of where my thoughts were.
Yeah. Well, this is
And-
great. I think it's really
The
much
one
needed.
thing I noticed though, Lee, is that I think numbers 13 and 24 on the other spreadsheet were really the same thing.
Yeah, it could have been. It definitely
Yeah,
could
because
have been. So,
13 was the property tax abatement, and then
Yeah.
24 was also the property tax.
Okay.
abatement. So-
Yeah, I think, when I
Yeah.
first created that, I always meant to go back and clean it up, and it just
Mhm.
kind of got put on the long finger. So this is why it's wonderful that you went in and cleaned it up. But what this really does is just show, first of all, the amount of
Yeah.
work we've really done, which is, fair play to all you guys and the whole housing subcommittee, but just, the big lift that this housing subcommittee is doing. And, that opens up the whole discussion is, is the town ready for, to hire someone that's, specifically concentrated on the housing. So there's quite a lot of action items and things to discuss, but it's nice to get this all on one housing worksheet and take a big bird's eye view of this and break it down into all the different impacts and the efforts and the costs. So this is really good. And obviously this is a working document, so as things come up and someone might say, hey, I read about this in Nantucket, what do we think about it? We could always add on. So that's the beauty of this. This is progressive, and it's it's something that we can keep coming back to. So good job.
So one caution about it, I had to make a change to it because I put filters on the columns,
Oh, okay.
but the impact actually had a formula on it. So
Okay. Did I mess something up? Or
I don't think you messed anything up at all, but if you sort by effort, for example,
yeah.
sort by effort A to Z, and
Oh,
see those
those are
value
good now.
things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, I won't touch it.
I'll
Fair.
have to send another one out. That's
Yeah.
that was it.
No, that's good. Okay, so that's great. So we'll
right.
we'll put this aside for now, and we'll come back when we start talking about really what we want to do for Monday's meeting. But let me switch this. I'm going to stop my share for a second and switch to the other thing. So what I'd like to do is briefly go back to the affordable housing tax exemption that I went through last meeting. I cleaned it up. I took some notes, and let me bring this back up. And I know that Garfield wasn't here, so this will be good actually to bring this back. So before I begin with this, again, just the overview of this is that this is just, opening up the discussion. This isn't trying to say we should do this X, Y, and Z, but it's really to get things going and to bring it into a realm that the public can feel that they're part of this discussion, that the planning board, select board can all weigh in. So, this is just kind of trying to move things forward, be proactive, because we have a real heavy lift in terms of the housing crisis. So I wanted to kind of pick a couple things that we can get our, our teeth into. So this is the opening slide. This will be used. Well, this is used, I used for the two different proposals that we'll be speaking about tonight. But just, real briefly, you saw this. Great Barrington is grappling with the housing crisis that adversely affects our community sustainability, social identity, workforce, and quality of life. Increased housing costs are displacing longtime residents, and demand for affordable housing far outstrips supply. So Okay, so this is called tax exemption for owners of affordable year-round housing. So the thought is, I'm just trying to make it in these little bite-sized snapshots. The strategy is increased affordable long-term rental housing inventory by incentivizing property owners. Property owners who provide affordable housing are exempt from paying property tax on the portion of their property being rented at or below affordable rates to income-eligible households. The affordable housing exemption is a standalone proposal. It should not be confused with a residential exemption. Long-term rentals only. To qualify for an exemption, the housing unit must be leased for the entire fiscal year, 12-month lease. Low and or moderate income households only. Unit must be leased to income eligible renters with verified tax returns. So you might notice that I added moderate income as well. So because it's open-ended, we don't really have the AMI set. I wanted to make sure we included that. Great Barrington can set the AMI, which qualifies for an exemption. This is example, so up to 80%. This is the kind of the HUD established rates. Up to 80% AMI is affordable housing. I put it in quotes. 80% to 120% is generally regarded as workforce housing, and that's based on established HUD income limits. So it's just giving you a sense of the range that, if we're talking about affordable housing, we're thinking about, generally up to 80%. If we want to include workforce housing, we might want to extend that up towards 120 AMI.
I have a question. Can
Yeah.
we back up to that one?
Sure.
Okay, obviously I had not been to the last meeting and kind of been distracted. Is this going to be presented or to the public as it stands right now?
So what this was going to be was this was going to be presented to the joint session of the planning board and select board on Monday
Right.
in a public session. So this is to go through the slides, and obviously the public will be, hearing this along with the select board and planning board.
Well, I
And
think
this
we
is-
need to put, I apologize, some concrete numbers, because
Yep.
people aren't going to know.
Yeah.
80% and 80.
Yeah, exactly. So that's coming up on the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Rents assume that the landlord pays all utilities, and allowance for any utilities paid by tenants must be deducted from these rents. The exemption, and this is just the overview still. The exemption is granted by the principal assessor on a year-to-year basis. If a property qualifies for that year, an exemption is granted, no deed restrictions required. So this is an example. So an owner has a duplex. They live in one unit, they rent out the other unit of equal size. Without the exemption, the property owner would pay $6,000 if leased for the full fiscal year, and he qualifies for the exemption. Then he would pay half of that $6,000, so he'd be paying $3,000. So basically splitting what he would normally pay because he has an exemption. Therefore, this affordable housing exemption would save the owner $3,000 in real estate taxes. So this is just a real quick, dirty example of how that might work. Provincetown has enacted this, so we're fortunate that we have a municipality that has been using this since 2002, 2003, and this gives you a little brief overview of how they came about. So they passed this pretty quickly. 2002, they had a special town meeting. They submitted a home rule petition, excuse me. It was introduced in the state legislature. It was enacted by the House and the Senate. It was signed. And at the end of the year, acting Jane Swift signed it into law. So they, if you go onto the Provincetown website, you can actually see they have a whole section on their webpage about this. So I just pulled their application offline just to give you a sense of this. This is actually 5 pages long, but it just shows you that what they do and some of the information that they're looking for. Obviously, this could all be right size for Great Barrington. This is some of the language that they have for their application. Just to note that they are targeting low income households. So they have renters, household income limits may not exceed 80% of the median household. So they have the information very clearly there on the application. If Great Barrington is interested in this, one question is, do we want to up the AMI to include workforce housing? So that's, that's a real discussion there. Then I was able to get from the Provincetown assessor, with help from Ross, our own principal assessor, how they go about this. So this is just kind of a quick, dirty calculation, but I wanted to give you a sense of how they work with it. So they have the square footage of a property. They take the square footage of the property that's, falls under the exemption, calculates that, and then comes up with the amount that's exempted. So what's nice here is that you can, see pretty quickly through this, this calculator that they set up, that they can see how much, money is being exempted and how much it's costing the town. So they have this, pretty much sorted out after so many years. So this is something that we could learn through, for Provincetown. And not to go too much into this, because I know I covered this on our last meeting, but you can see how it was a slow take up and now it's increased substantially, and how they're tracking the amount that it's costing the town in lost revenue. So this is something that we could use and track, whether we want to do things such as capping the exemptions, or just paying attention to the numbers of units that are falling under this exemption. So to answer Garfield's question, if we moved ahead with this, we would be very, very clear, what qualified in terms of the area median income. So, what's the renter's area median income? And if it was, 80% under, where would that be? So you can see here, and this is from Chris, and I think Malcolm, you sent that to me. He sent this to the planning board.
Yes.
Yeah. So each year it changes. So this is something that would be updated annually, but this gives you kind of a sense of the net that we would be looking towards for the exemptions. So anything that moved forward, we'd make it very, very clear that people understood, what renters could be covered under this exemption in terms of the landlord, and where that cutoff is. So real quickly, PROS allows for small scale scattered sites approach to affordable / workforce housing versus grouping lower income renters in dense housing developments. Another pro offers a significant cost saving alternative to building new housing. And generally a new unit of housing is costing between $250,000 to $350,000 a unit. So that's one of the pros. And this was just added, incentivizes property owners to offer housing that is affordable to local workforce rather than charge higher rents or operate short-term rental. So this is just another way to incentivize property owners. Now, obviously we can't compete with some of the rents that they could charge, but it gives them another reason to do this. And the big con is lost revenue to the town. So, this would really entail a deep dive from the assessor to say, what would we do to go about this? And if we were to set this AMI and we anticipate, so many units coming on stream, what would that lost revenue look like? Also, we would have to see the cost of running this program. So there will be some revenue loss, but, the alternative is we have a housing crisis, and this is one way to tackle that. Another con or another item to make note is that this is a multi-step process. So first town meeting approval is needed. Then if it's approved, then the home rule petition would be filed in the state legislature. The exemption can be only adopted if the legislature approves it and the governor signs it. And historically, these have stalled in the legislature. So that's one reason to to start the process now. So I'm not in any we know that this is going to take quite a few months, few years, but the sooner we start the process in terms of the discussion, the better.
Can I ask you about the revenue loss, Lee?
Yes.
I'm just concerned, will that coincide with anything else perhaps that would take away money from the town and make people say, oh my God, I can't do this.
Well, that's, we would have to kind of balance that out. So that's a bigger discussion. So, you know, if we have if we have a housing crisis, and one of the strategies to address this affordable housing crisis is to create more housing, whether that's building new housing or repurposing housing that's not being rented affordably, you know, how do we address that? So, you know, do we build new housing at a cost of $250,000 and up per unit that could take, you know, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? Or do we work with the housing that's available already in town, that's already within neighborhoods, and we incentivize owners to offer it? So, you know, it's part of a bigger discussion, but it's a strategy that I think we should take a look at. But there will be, you know, there will be revenue lost, but if you balance it with, you know, having to do something to address the affordable housing crisis, you know, at what stage do we want to dive in? This is my last slide, I believe. So the home rule petition can be right sized for Great Barrington. So some of the items that we would discuss if this moved forward is, you know, determining the area median income levels to qualify for exemption. So, you know, when a landlord's, you know, puts in the application for an exemption and they have a renter, you know, what's the area median income does that renter have to qualify? So that's probably the biggest one. Provincetown is sticking with the affordable housing, you know, the established HUD limits, income limits for affordable. So they're saying 80% and under for AMI. The other item to think about is, do we cap the number of annual exemptions? So if we're worried about a certain revenue loss, you know, do we say, okay, well, once it goes over X amount of dollars, you know, we really can't afford that as a town to lose that. So, you know, do we want to cap them? And, you know, is that a number that we look at each year? And another item that came up just from getting some feedback from residents is inspecting exempted properties for quality control. So someone said, you know, what if a landlord you know, doesn't take care of their property, and then they apply to be, you know, having to have this exemption? You know, how can we make sure that they're actually, you know, offering a quality rental, and they're not just, you know, getting some tax benefits from this? So that was just something that I added. So proposed next steps, public input, and then the assessor would, you know, I would love to have Ross, you know, present some information to us. And then, you know, have Provincetown, I think, to have someone that is actually going through this and walking us through the steps. And then eventually getting town staff to work with us to draft a home rule petition and then a town meeting vote. So this doesn't mean this is all going to happen in the next 2 months, but at least we have an idea of some of the steps. So a lot to think about, but it generally is, it's the overview, it's the concept I'm trying to put forward. So, you know, trying to show you a bit of everything and then taking it from there.
I think it looks pretty good, Lee, but I have a couple comments.
Yeah.
One, I would hurry through the Provincetown slides.
Okay.
Because it's a long presentation and there's a lot of detail there, and you don't want people really getting bogged down in the in how they do the forms. And the other thing is, on the instead of showing the income levels on that chart from Chris, it might be better to show the rent levels. And the reason for this is that what that chart shows is that at 80%, you know, if your housing cost shouldn't exceed 30% of your income, then at 80%, the 30% rental is below the market rate. But when you get to 120%, the 30% is actually above the market rate. So incenting people to offer higher priced rentals probably isn't a good idea. That's the kind of thing we're gonna have to take a look at, is who, you know, because even at 100% AMI in our town is actually close to market rate.
Yeah.
And that's because really the median income is not a good measure, because the median income is skewed by the number of higher income people that we have as residents in the town. So the median income is going to be higher. So 80% of the median income is actually going to be, or 100% of the median income is going to be really close to what our market rate is
Mhm,
in
mhm.
Great Barrington. So
So in that
I-
sheet, did Chris show that? And maybe I just cut that off, or is
it
that,
was it was the bottom half of the thing I sent you.
okay,
You sent the top, you included the top half, which says the income. I mean, what the incomes are for the AMI, which, as you say, that changes from year to year. But the bottom half of the sheet was, okay, here's what that means as far as the rental rates.
oh, okay, let me actually, because I have that here, let me just. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, see, there's the rental rates. And if you look at the bottom table there,
Mhm.
that's the gap between the affordable rate and the market rate. And a negative gap, like if you look at 80% of AMI for a 2-bedroom,
Mhm.
that negative 326. Okay, that means the affordable housing rate is $326 under the market rate. Whereas when you get to 100% of AMI, the 30% affordable rate is actually higher than the market rate.
Mm.
And when you get to 120%, it's significantly higher than the market rate.
So is this kind of move us towards, not limiting it to the 80% AMI like Provincetown did, and moving more towards a market
No,
rate?
this is arguing for keeping it at 80%.
Yeah.
We would be incenting people to offer houses above market rate
Yeah.
And then
or apartments above market rate.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good point.
thing the AMI does is it really increase the cost, right?
I mean, the difference is
Because a lot more rentals are eligible then. And so then greatly increase the cost of the loss in revenue.
Yeah.
Mhm. So is this something that we want to, as a subcommittee, just put forth the recommendation of following what Provincetown is and just going 80%, doing the affordable AMIs and sticking with the 80% as the baseline, or do we want to open it up to? Because this will be a question. I think you explained this really well, Malcolm, but it is something that, I've had feedback saying, well, what about the workforce? And we're kind of the missing middle.
For this program, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Just because it puts a lot of pressure on what's left over, right?
Yeah.
Too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we do debate whether to use the 80%, 100%, or 20% threshold
Mhm.
on a bunch of things, including some of the zoning things we're looking at. But I think that's different than incenting people with money. And we have to be careful if we're going to send people with money that we're
Yeah.
actually getting what we're expecting.
Yeah. Well, that's also the worry that I've heard is if you do extend it, over the 80% AMI, people that would normally rent lower, they would say, oh, I can charge more rent and still qualify for the exemption. So
And that's right. They could
Yeah.
at 120%. Yeah.
So coming back to this, the slides that, let me just make a copy real quick. The slides that you think that we can lose, Malcolm, or anyone?
Well, I'm not sure you want to lose them. but I
Just
think
kind
you
of go
should just
through
show
them.
this is what Provincetown had to come
Okay.
up with.
Okay, and then if they want a deep dive, and then this, I'll just switch it out to really kind of show a little bit more of this.
And the table above it too, which is the actual rentals.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the
This,
actual
okay.
rentals is the most important because the people you're trying to convince are the people that are going to charge the rent. And
Mhm.
so knowing what affordable rates are for the household size that's going to be renting, I think that's the most important thing.
I agree.
Okay.
Because
So-
also the gap thing is that's just based on what Chris feels is like the average rates, right? And so that can vary a lot depending on, the unit that you're renting.
Well, except we're gonna have to, I mean, this, if this goes through, we're gonna have to establish a standard of what is the rent
No.
for two people and an 80%.
I think that
For 80%.
if you hit the 80%, that's the rent is, so if the rent includes like the normal housing costs, the high end of the rent is that 80% line. So it just strictly matters how many people that household is. And so if
Right.
it's a one household, you know, what they can spend is $12.89 a month. So that's the rent.
Right.
If two people, $14.74. If it's three people, $16.58. And see, the difficulty with this is that, you know, that 1280, I don't know. Anyways, I always think the difference between 1 and 2 is it's such a big thing. Because one person making 80% of area mean is a lot. They're making a lot more than two people, right? When you divide them in half.
Yeah, well, I guess we're gonna need some kind of cutoff, so.
Oh yeah, but these are the rates, right? So when you're
Mhm.
renting a property, you're considering it's like all inclusive. Like, so
Yeah.
if you have to pay your electricity on top of that, if you have to pay gas or if you have to pay other things, those expenses have to be calculated in. And so with the landlord is going to have to calculate those in and reduce the rental price accordingly.
Mhm, mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and Lee points that out in the
Yeah.
presentation.
And but I also had one question. So for most like income qualified rentals and purchases, there's some entity that's like vetting those. And so this is done after the fact, am I correct? Because for the tax bill, so this is after the person has lived in the unit for 12 months. Is that how it works?
No, this will be part of the application. So with the application, with the landlord applying for an exemption, they would have to have the lease with them and the renter's income, you know, the tax returns showing that the renter actually makes, you know, 80% AMI and under. So they would actually have to show that at the time of applying for an exemption.
And so this is
Before they're
staff.
granted the exemption. So they have to prove that they're renting it to an income eligible renter.
So this is staff that's gonna do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a question, you know, that's why it's important to get Ross in the conversation. And I did make a request that he come to the meeting on Monday. So that, you know, these are some of the questions. He's not going to have everything right there, but at least he'll have some idea of some of the staff time. And again, the beauty is that we have Provincetown. They've been very, very helpful in terms of sending some information so far in my research, and Ross has been super helpful. So, you know, we have a municipality that's willing to guide us through their process, which is, I think this will be a good step.
That would be an interesting question for them, if that's the office that is doing that, or because there's other parts of the town that do establish income, but I don't know if the assessor's office already do that, or is that something completely new for them?
Yeah, I mean, you mean the Great Barrington, the principal assessor, would they be doing that? Yeah, I mean, that it would probably take, similar to when the residential exemption was being discussed, there was a proposal, and part of the question is, you know, would we have to hire an additional staff member just to take this on? Because there will be, you know, there could be some more staff time needed that Ross can't take on himself. So that would be part of the discussion for sure.
I just have a question because
Yeah.
I have to admit, I'm a little lost in this, and I'm hoping that the town folks won't feel the same way, but I think we really need to get things simplified for sure. Because it's a lot to digest. And also my concern or my question is, if we may have to hire someone to do this work, and we're going to have a loss of revenue, can we offset that? And people will not be happy hearing if we're gonna have to hire someone and lose money on top of it.
Well, that's a discussion on, you know, that's a bigger discussion on how we address the affordable housing crisis. So there's going to be some lost revenue somewhere, and then there's going to be some benefits elsewhere. So it's, it's going to be one of these things that we'll have to weigh out the pros and the cons and
Well,
get
this is true.
how-
And I think we are the choir, if I may.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have to make sure, and I'm saying being the devil's advocate, I just see it not going as smoothly as we think it's going to go.
Well, all we're doing is asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, recommending that this move forward for further study. So we're not endorsing it. We're saying that this is a good concept that has, worked in another municipality that's willing to help us move through the process. And do we want this to progress so that the public can start, having input? And so it's really kind of opening the doors to saying, hey, this is one strategy that we could use to address the housing crisis. And there's a precedent here that has worked or seemed to have worked. And what's the alternative if we need affordable housing, and we know it's going to cost X amount and be 5 to 10 years of building versus repurposing something. So there's all these pros and cons, but really
Well, I
the
get
end of
it.
the day is how do we address the housing crisis?
So, Lee, I think Garfield's got a point. I mean, it really is important at this stage, which is really just introductory,
Mhm.
to streamline it. So maybe you should get rid of that chart
Okay, yeah,
altogether.
I'm actually gonna
Um,
let me share
I
this.
mean,
now.
why get bogged down explaining,
Right.
100% versus 80% versus
Yeah.
120%?
Mhm.
And
People just
So-
don't like to hear loss of money. I'm sorry. It's just the
yeah,
fact.
no, you're
I
right.
didn't want to,
Well,
Don't want to hear
keep it
that.
under the rug because obviously that'll be something we'll have to.
no, I mean, it's the question's pretty straightforward, Garfield. I mean, if it costs $3,000 a year per unit and 50 people take this up, that's going to cost the town about $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
Is the town willing to invest $150,000 a year for 50 affordable units?
Mhm.
That's really what it boils down
Well,
to. Yes or no?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either, and I'm not sure the town is, but that's what the
Right.
question is.
I mean,
That's-
what's interesting, Garfield, is, with the application from Ian Rash to the CPC for an affordable housing unit. So correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the requests was for $250,000, the town could have an affordable housing unit in one of the developments in town. So if you look at that and you say, okay, well, if a developer is requesting $250,000 for a unit of affordable housing, versus the town incentivizing, a landlord to offer affordable housing, and okay, we lose, $4,000 a year by doing that. Is that a fair trade-off? So that would be the argument I would have.
I think that Ian Rash's request was too much.
Well, what I'm saying is that really is a good, I think, one good example of what we're up against, paying
Mhm.
developers to add an affordable housing. We don't have inclusionary zoning. So, we, in this case, or at least for this, for that particular development, for us to get that affordable housing unit, we would have had to pay the town through the CPC funds, that amount of money, $250,000. So this is instead of that. This is incentivizing a landlord that already has a property to in return for getting an exemption on that part of the property that's being rented affordably. Okay, they get that, but look, we get this affordable housing unit in a neighborhood for $4,000 a year. So
I mean, this one is, it's all based on the assumption that the town is willing to put up a certain amount of money, whatever that amount of money is, to affordable housing. And so that's basically what this ask is. And I'm
Mhm.
with Garfield. I'm not sure that the town's at that place where they're willing to do that. I mean, we can try, but I think the cap, might be, because then it's like, well, this is as much as it's going to cost,
Right.
and talk about adjusting this cap, but it'll come back to town meeting. And so if I understand you right, you have to apply for this in advance, right? And so then that's how the cap's met. That was my question, is how the cap works.
Yeah,
I mean, I think if you're applying for an advance, then that's great, I mean, yeah, like decide what the cap is, decide what the number seems reasonable to present to town meeting, and then
mhm,
I think you can do this, and then we'll know from the response, right?
Mhm.
Whether,
exactly. I mean, what is the town prepared to lose each year towards, creating affordable housing? So if we have that magic number, say, okay, well, $300,000, we'll grant enough exemptions to reach that mark, and then that's it. So, yeah. Real quickly, since I have you, just to clean up this slideshow. So Garfield, stepping through just the basic slides, this is just introducing it. Was there any, and everyone chime in, is there anything?
All good.
do you want to say, because you introduce, oh, so you say it there. See, when you say moderate and low income, there's
Yep.
you don't tie it anywhere to AMI at that point. So it's like new terminology, which people might not understand. And
Yeah,
so
okay.
Moderate is 80% and below, and then low is,
Well,
is-
maybe I'm making it more complicated to your notes. Maybe I should take
Yeah.
out the moderate and just stick it with the, keep with the affordable. 'Cause
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me do that. Yeah, so I agree. So let's see.
I don't know if this should be addressing workforce housing,
Mhm,
because I think Malcolm is totally right. It's
Mhm.
just then anybody that's renting could get this exemption.
mhm.
And it's just only if you happen to live in your own house and you're not rented to you by your family.
Yeah, no, exactly. So with this slide then, do I want to even go here, or do I just want to say, affordable is up to 80% and then just
Yeah.
make it?
I think just leave it at there. I mean, I think in the next
Yeah.
presentation,
Yeah.
you can,
I agree.
So
I would do that, Lee.
Do
And
what?
if somebody asks about 100% or 120, then we can discuss it. But
So should I have this slide at all, just to say this is what?
whew.
Because they're gonna say, okay, well, it's for affordable,
I mean, I think we can say it, and we can say the reason why we think,
Well,
Go
Good
into-
just leave it. Yeah.
okay, so
I
we
agree
have
with
it's
Jeremy.
low income households only. So the next slide, do we want to say what low income means, or just not have this? Will this be?
yeah, I don't know if I would say what look.
I don't think it's important that Great Barrington can set the AMI, which qualifies for.
No, yeah, no, I'm gonna definitely change it,
Okay,
but I'm just
yeah.
wondering if I should say that.
Just
low
get rid of
income-
it.
Okay, all right.
I don't, so I like low income. I don't know if this really addresses low income housing. I think that's more that, it's the other kind of affordable housing we have in town. Because we're going to say, this is the rent that you can charge, and that's 80%. So that's not addressing, unless the landlord wants to say, hey, I'm going to knock off another, $400 a month.
So
that
Yeah, so what I
Or-
could do is going towards what Provincetown is. They're saying low income houses only, and then they say renters' household income limits may not exceed. So I could maybe
then
lift this. I could lift this and qualify what a low income household is.
I think you can just put 80% of the AMI up there, and not on that one, on the one before it, and get rid of
Yeah.
that one altogether.
I wouldn't mind seeing those numbers shown like they just were shown myself.
Well, yeah, that was the chart that I thought was kind of confusing, though.
Yeah.
So is
Having to
this-
go through and explain those?
So, okay, so if I
Well,
just
but do you
say,
think the average Joe's gonna know what
Yeah, that's
80% of the AMI is? I don't think so.
There we go.
I don't know if you want to say low income or income qualified instead, because once you use the name low, if people who understand it might be going low
eligible.
Yeah, there you go.
income
Oh.
eligible.
Good idea. Income eligible households.
Yeah, that's.
Wait, that's not right. How do I spell that? Eligible.
Yeah, you're missing an I there in front of the
L-E.
G.
Eligible.
There
There
you
you go.
Wait, no.
Well, Ellie,
Well,
yeah.
you're close.
you
There
go.
we go.
Is that
You
right?
go, girl. Hey, spelling's hard, all right?
I should stop sharing while I'm trying to figure this out.
You have it.
Right?
All right, so, okay. Income eligible households up to, okay, so that's clear. And then I'll get rid of this one. All right, so I'll figure all this stuff out.
If you do the AM numbers, you can just put the 80% because then people understand that's below. I mean, those numbers only really matter for, like 100 Bridge Street, where they have certain number of units at 80, certain number at 60, and, and so forth. But this is just what's the line.
Okay, unit must be leased to renters with verified.
Okay.
I'm kind of repeating that, but
Yeah,
Well,
huh?
it's all right.
That's fine. Okay.
because I think it helps to make the point.
Okay. So then this is fine. And then I thought the, example.
That's good.
Okay, case study. So just breeze through this or not?
Well, I
Yeah.
think this slide here you should stop at because it shows the timeline.
Okay. So keep that.
Provincetown, when they put it in, they, by December after the annual town meeting, they had approval from the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next slide, I think you just want to introduce, okay, this is the kind of stuff that
Mhm.
Provincetown had to develop for their program.
Okay, so just kind of breeze through this.
Yeah.
Breeze through that.
I would suggest that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this was the one that was gonna change, so it's,
I would get rid of it altogether.
oh, okay.
Probably get rid of it altogether because it's
Yeah.
not a great selling point. I mean, you could have that.
We would
and
get bogged down, yeah.
just
Okay.
the % line.
Okay.
So if it asks what are, where is 80%? And so, like the current figure is 80% for a one person household is this. And so just having that handy, but
Yeah,
Yeah, I
okay,
would, just like you showed
I have
us.
a
Yeah.
question about
okay.
this.
That's when we toss it to Chris.
I'm getting hung up on the,
He's not listening.
I'm getting hung up on the 80% thing. And some guy wants to get a house and maybe he's making $45,000. How does he know if he's got it? Will somebody, I guess, will be readily available to answer these questions for someone?
Yeah.
We're
That'll
not
be,
going to make it
so if
clear.
this goes into effect, it'll be very clear, and this is what Provincetown has done on their application, what qualifies. And as you see here, they've, they have the annual income limits, which changes each year. And someone that has that question as you do, will be able to clearly see, okay, well, do I qualify? So they have it broken down, as you can see in table 2, the monthly rental limits. And they talk about how the utilities is part of this. So
Will that
we
be
would make sure.
easily accessed by a person who wants to find this information?
Absolutely. Yeah. This would be part of the rollout. Yeah. Okay, so we're breezing through Provincetown pros and cons. So this was one of them. Are we happy with that?
I think so, yes, absolutely.
Okay. What about this?
Yeah, one of the,
I like it
Okay.
myself.
do you want to, I mean, that's on the assumption you're not using the word town in that,
I'm
But
not,
that-
no, I took it out. Yeah.
that the town is building housing, which
No.
that
Yeah, no, I'm not. And, whether it's a nonprofit or the town funding it through CPC funds, I mean, someone's going to have to figure out a way to get more housing. So,
so how much did Ian Rash ask for per unit?
he,
well, to
make
add
them
an affordable
affordable.
unit
It was-
is 250,000.
it was
It was
250
250,000
for
for 10
20
years.
for 20 years,
20 years?
or 125 for 10 years.
Yeah.
Basically,
Okay, so
For-
basically it's 12,500 a year.
If
So
I
what we're
may-
proposing is a program that would cost the town not 12,500 a year, but 3,000 a year.
Yeah.
but the problem is that we're contrasting this against that versus contrasting this with the towns on projects like 100 Bridge Street or South Main and things like that. And if you cost it out that way, it's a completely different conversation because so much of the money is coming from other sources.
Yeah,
But it's
Jeremy,
still significant, the
yeah,
cost.
I think I kind of agree with the argument that we can't put all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah, no, and that's why.
And even though we have a lot of affordable housing in these developments in town, it's still not enough.
Yep.
So I think we have to have other programs.
And I think this is nice because it gets like regular homeowners involved.
Mhm.
Like they want to be involved. This is one way they can get involved. I mean, they can do it if they really want to get involved, but then this way they get,
They get some money out of it.
they get some.
If I may say, the amount of money asked that Mr. Rash was asking, I'm not the only one in the Affordable Housing Committee who thought that was too much. Just so you're aware.
But
And that's
also-
from the Affordable Housing Committee.
Yeah,
If
but I
you-
think that's realistic in terms of how much it costs in terms of new development. It
Yeah,
may have been too much, but I'm not sure it was unrealistic. It was unrealistic on his part in
Mhm.
terms of his actual costs.
I think if you want private developers in, yeah, based on costs, that's what it's going to cost, unless they will find some sort of private funding to help subsidize.
Yeah, or public funding, but
Yeah.
usually
This
it's
is great because
nonprofits.
this
that are only
offers,
eligible.
this offers an alternative to
I will
that.
bring it
Yep.
back again to the affordable housing, but that is a feeling that was went around when that was spoken.
Mhm.
Just, you know,
Okay,
Yeah, it's a lot of
so,
money for one unit.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. A lot of money.
This slide, are we happy with this or change it,
Mhm.
edit? Fine. It's all about incentivizing, so.
I-
Do we want to make it obvious that this is one of the cons, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we definitely.
Yes.
Or do I just
Yeah.
not?
No,
No,
I think you need to, in fact, I think you should put a number in there. At 3,000 a unit, 50 affordable housing units would cost the town 150,000 a year.
Say it again.
Let's say the example would be $3,000 per unit. That's probably high, but $3,000.
Oh, in terms of, yeah.
Yeah, tax, per unit. If 50 people took it up, that would be 150,000 a year.
I'm just writing this, times 50 exemptions. Equals how many?
150,000. No, not
I
400.
can't type and think at the same time.
Yeah, it's capital 4.
All right. And I'll obviously make it pretty, but that's kind of what we're thinking, is to give a sense of.
Yeah, I mean, let's not hide it. I mean, that's what it's going to
Yeah.
cost. And Jeremy introduced the concept of caps. I don't know that it costs the province, but that's the example we use, $3,000. So you might as well go
Okay.
through with that.
But I
Yes,
think
that's 50, that's 50 units of affordable housing we're building right
Yeah.
there. So
And that's a lot
that's pretty substantial,
for
versus
150,000.
let's say, is that right? 50 times,
Yeah.
yeah. Versus, let's say 250, I'm just doing this right. 250 times,
I
I think we need real numbers in there and not supposed numbers.
well, we have to kind of give a roundabout. I mean, it's gonna
Well,
change.
I
think it gives us a
wouldn't-
sense.
Well, what we're
I'm
bringing
just
to
doing this for
people
my
who
own
need to
thing.
be
I'm not
big.
putting this.
I
in there.
wouldn't present that.
Yeah. No, I'm just,
like we don't, like, I think as a town, we don't really want to stifle anyone's at least presenting things to the town, right? So we don't want to like penalize developer or saying like, hey, this is what it will cost me to do this, right? And the town can just say, no, we at this time we don't want to take advantage of that, right? I think that should be the end of it. Like we don't need to then use it as a,
I don't think we should put the numbers in personally, because if it's more, people will holler. You
Well,
told me.
we have to give them a sense of what it could, what we're looking at.
But I think then I think maybe the presentation, you should throw a number at a cap and then say, and set the cap at whatever, but
Yeah.
Look, maybe it's me, maybe it's bad, but here's the thing, you're saying we have to give them a sense. Of course we do, but I think we need to be more right on with the sense because people aren't going to appreciate this. That's how I feel. I just think when we're talking to the town, we're talking money, we're talking what may be lost. If we're talking that it's going to be this amount and it's not, then that's a problem. I don't think we need to have the dollars and cents here right now. Even though we're trying to give a sense, we're saying lost revenue to the town. Okay, all right, and no, they'll need a number, but I don't know if we should have it. You know it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you should say lost revenue to the town if we're really talking about the cap. The cap could be blank, and you know, for an estimate, this is how many units you could get.
For
Okay,
each,
so-
why don't you just put 10 units
Okay,
and $30,000? And just say for each 10 units, you know, it would cost the town only $30,000 in tax exemptions.
mhm.
And if you want to put a cap of 10 units or 50 units or 100 units, then we know roughly what the ballpark is going to be as far as the cost goes. But if we can actually get people to do this for $3,000 a year, create an affordable unit in their houses, and get multiple people to do it, it's going to make an impact.
Huge, yeah. I mean, I've already, received emails from people saying, this would really incentivize me. I have a granny flat that I've always wanted to do up, and this would incentivize me to spend money. And so
Well, even
it's a
that,
good tidbit,
That's a
that's
good,
good pro that, if it's going to add housing units to the market. So in just, changing rental units from,
Yes.
rate to versus if it's also going to add new units, then that's wonderful.
yeah.
mm.
So does this look fine, or is this too much information?
Well, I'm a TMI, but I'm only one person. I can live with that, but I think I don't like it.
I mean, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
explain it anyways, but when we say lost revenue to town, just to explain.
Somebody's
what
going
we
to say
mean.
how much.
Yeah, so at this point, we're estimating everything. We don't know how many people are going to take up the exemption. We can only have a ballpark figure of square footage.
That's why
Yeah, this is
if you set the cap, then that's how much is lost to the town. That's the math.
Exactly. I mean, that sounds like the way to go. So there's no
Yeah.
surprises.
Because then it's no
We
surprise.
control the number of affordable housing exemptions. Yeah.
The surprise is just how many units you get out of that.
yeah,
That's-
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So
That's a good idea, Jim.
if I won't hang on this, but if afterwards you guys have thoughts, just send it on. Okay. And this multi-step process. So now we're gonna get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
What about this inspect exempted quote?
I think that's important.
Okay.
I was thinking about that myself, Lee, and we don't want to encourage people to become slumlords.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to do quality control, or do we just want to do life safety? Because
Well,
I
it
think
doesn't matter. I mean, quality control. I don't know. We're not defining it, Jeremy. I think it's just a concept. at this point.
Why did
Yeah.
we skip before the one previous?
but
Yeah,
aren't we really talking about life safety stuff is the main things that these units need to have? Or are we talking about quality? Because that, I mean, I don't know.
Well,
If people are going to think, well, geez, do I have to completely renovate to be able
no,
to?
I mean, it's,
No.
I think it's just, we don't want landlords jumping on this exemption saying, oh, I'm getting this tax break, therefore I don't have to do anything, getting lazy and taking advantage of renters. So I think it's just kind of and it could be something that's a random, sporadic inspections. I mean, we can figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some standards, Jeremy, and the standards may just be
Oh, no.
building code. I don't know.
Yeah.
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 I'm thinking it's just like what we generally group as life safety stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Code.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So Garfield, you were wondering why we skipped through this. It's just kind of showing people that it's not as simple as a town meeting and then next year it's enacted. So this,
Right.
In fact, it at this point, you should make the point that the town meeting approval has to be done first.
yeah, it says first town.
So, you know,
Yeah, no, that's written well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so these are the only two in terms of right-sized.
Mhm.
And then that's it. So public input questions, assessor presentation, Provincetown. And this is just, you know. So, yeah.
I just noted Bill Cook has his hand up, and I don't know
Oh, okay.
whether it's comment on this topic or,
Okay, sorry. It's hard for me to see when I'm presenting.
I'll try to keep an eye on things. I missed it though.
Hey, Bill. Bill?
You're
Hi.
muted.
I'm here.
Hey.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, it seems like you are requiring this to be an owner occupied rental. Is that correct?
We haven't.
Yes, I
Okay,
think that's the assumption.
because I know a number of people who own multifamily houses and rent them out almost affordably, really, and get no benefit. But they don't live in the house.
Well, I think, are you talking about duplexes, Bill, or multifamily?
well,
So yeah,
duplex
I mean,
or-
no, this is, but you know, this would definitely cater to people that have duplexes. So in the example that we give, the owner lives in one side of the duplex and on
Right,
the other
but
side
what if
is-
the owner does not live in one side? What if the owner
I
doesn't
think
live in the house
that's-
at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we should consider if we want to. I mean, that makes sense. If it creates affordable housing, it creates affordable housing. And
Right.
do we want to incentivize people to do this rather than short-term rental or, you know? just
Exactly. So
that
I think
rate?
that should be taken into consideration
Okay.
and made clear. The other
So
thing,
I could
oh,
put
go
that
ahead.
in one of the slides. Yeah, go ahead.
the other thing is, the incentive has to be enough. If you're talking about saving a landlord $3,000 a year, that's $250 a month in rent. Is that going to be enough to incentivize somebody?
Well, we
Well,
can
be
only do
close.
so much. Yeah.
It might be close, but you know,
Yep.
if they can make, you know, more than $250 a month by renting it at a higher rate, what's their incentive to take advantage of this program?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're not to go up against what people can get for market rate and short-term rental. We're never going to meet that. So we're
And-
trying to give them enough of incentive to.
But I
Right.
think Bill's point is good. We'd have to consider that. I mean, there's no point in putting forth a program that's nobody's going to take up because they're going to lose money if they do.
Mm.
Right. That's my point.
I think that's kind of the point of like what we came up against with the two proposals that Ian had, is that like, is the town really willing to subsidize the whole thing? And I wonder if in this circumstance, the town is also not willing to subsidize the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
How would that work though, Jeremy? So you're saying, why should the town even?
No. But what I'm saying is the difference between what they could get and what they are getting, like that's sort of nebulous, you know, whereas an AMI and what the calculation is, that's like concrete. You know, like the market rate is going to go all over the place. And if we're inventing a program that has to constantly meet the market rate, I mean, who's going to determine what the market rate is? Like what staff, like how is staff going to do that? You know?
Well,
I mean,
it's
you
gonna
can-
all be based on the established HUD income limits that each year they publish. So
No,
we'll
that's
have that to refer to each
I know.
year.
saying
Well-
is what people are losing by renting at that. Like, how do you establish that number if we're talking about like creating a program which doesn't penalize people for, you know, renting to affordable units?
Yeah,
How
that's a
do
good question. Jeremy, I think the market rate that Chris came up with. I'm not sure how he came up with that rate, but I think the market rate is whatever you could rent it for.
Yeah, but so,
And the affordable rate is established by 30% of the AMI, of 80% of the AMI.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be up to the homeowner to say, okay, if I'm gonna get $1,500 for this, can I get that much more to, that'll be more than the subsidy. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I
uh,
that's sort of the thing is like the homeowner's going to have to decide these things. I mean, like
Mhm.
we can go through that and kind of guess and say, is the chasm too big? Is this not even worth it because no one's going to do it? Like that can be part of the discussion, but I think you're never gonna make it equal.
I mean, the
Like-
beauty in this is that we can see the take up. So,
We
the
can see
town can say it's going to cost us this much to enact, and we want to, take that chance. I mean, we're never going to come up against people getting market rate for their places. I mean, we know that, but it might just be enough of an incentive for someone to say, hey, the hassle of, short-term renting, I could get a little bit of tax break and, long-term rent. And, it could push a certain group over the edge in terms of renting it affordably. And if we can get 10 people doing it, that's 10 units that we didn't have in neighborhoods. So, Bill, was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, that was it.
Okay,
Thank you.
fine,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Lori's got
Okay.
her hand up.
Oh. Hold on, Lori. Hey,
Hi,
Lori.
everyone. Hi. It's my first time at this meeting. I really admire all of the work that you've put into this. It's enormous. And I have had a 9-unit building in Housatonic for 25 years, I think. Since 1998, whatever that adds up to. And when I look at, I'm glad that it was good to take the charts down because all of my rents are below the market rent and all of my tenants earn below, like every single one, or maybe one earns more than the 80% of the median income. And even as a landlord and knowing how I know my numbers in my head and how things affect me, I couldn't really follow how this would benefit me, like right off the bat. It would take some thinking and actual to play through scenarios. So I just wanted to offer if anybody wants to meet with me to go through. I'm not incentivized by, sure, it'd be great to save some taxes, but I keep my rents affordable and with real people on purpose, just because I want to. So it's been that way for 25 years. I could have a choice of choosing a family or a corporate tenant, and I choose the family. So there's different ways to incentivize as well that some people might go for. And it would just be really interesting. I think, I don't know how many people besides Richard Stanley or other, like there's probably a few multi-unit properties, but if anybody has time to kind of review, I'd love to talk it out, and maybe that would offer some insight. I also noticed a term, I just want to bring this up because I don't know what it means. In the province town, it says the adaptation of residential exemption is revenue neutral for the town. I don't know what that means, but
I'd like to know what
right.
it is. Yeah.
I mean, I looked up what it means, but that doesn't mean I know what you actually do with it. But for me also, I would think, oh, if I apply to get a tax exemption, will you just raise the value and then I'll pay more tax, does it get evened out anyway? So just all these things that go through my head, but ways to create more affordable housing for like my children who grew up and were born and raised here. And, that's just really important. So I really kind of just offering myself if anybody wants to do that.
Wonderful.
Lori, I think the best time to take that up is when if the select board wants to go through with this, then I think that would be the opportunity to dive into the detail where the devil is here.
Yeah. If somebody wants to,
Because there's a lot of work that has to be done before this would get brought before town meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Insight
Well,
is
I'm here
valuable.
if anybody wants to reach out.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. I think we should.
Okay, so That's fine. So is everyone, let me just, the one thing I did add was this include non-owner occupied rentals. Is everyone okay with adding that or no? Just a discussion, or should we just assume?
I think we should consider that.
Oh, no,
that's
definitely,
a
yeah.
good- Yeah, it's a good
Mhm.
topic. And
I mean, I always kind of thought
yeah.
that would be part of it, but yeah, so just to have a, okay.
I mean,
So-
the other thing, you know, Laurie and Bill brought up or conjured up in my mind is the question of, are there already 50 affordable units being rented out there that people are now going to apply for
apply.
the tax exemption and not end up with any increase in affordable housing?
Oh,
at all?
interesting.
Whole property that would be exempt from taxation from property tax.
Mm,
Well, I mean, yeah, so I think that's something that has to be considered.
Because it means a zero.
Yeah,
There's leases in place for all 9 units for 12 months. And all 12 or all 9 units are qualified. Like that's the,
yeah,
and-
those are the discussions. That's the detail that we have to get into
and then also
the next phase on this.
with this, I don't know if we want to do number. I think we want to cap the amount because the number we're not going to get an impact. We won't know what the impact is because it's going to depend on the tax bill of the properties involved. And so
Mhm.
that's, you know, so we have no idea. But if we cap the amount, the annual
Yep.
expense, then we know like what the most it's going to be.
So, so instead of saying cap number of annual, cap dollar amount or
Cap
Yeah.
the,
dollar amount?
yeah, the total dollar for this program or whatever. And, you know, and I mean, I think Lori understood this, but like this proposal is not to solve affordable housing in Great Barrington. This is like a small, tiny piece of, right, a lot of things to try to work towards that.
Is that a better way? Is there a better way of saying this? Cap total amount? It looks funky. Cap, revenue loss or
Cap available funds.
Yeah, available funds. Cap available funds to this
Hmm.
tax exemption.
That's kind of confusing though. Cap,
Annual.
Just cap available funds, period.
For, yeah, for this
Cap
exemption
available funds, yeah.
hmm.
or annual available funds.
Can you, I'm not getting that, I guess.
So,
Not
like,
as right as you
Yeah,
guys.
just to control the take up. So if, let's say we have a huge amount of landlords applying for an exemption and all of a sudden the town is losing, you know, $500,000.
Yeah,
Is
So
this
if you want to cap
people?
it at 50,000 a year, then you say, you know, it's first come, first serve, 150. And you have to apply and you have to show
Available.
forth. And so, you know, but the feedback for if this is successful or not will be from that. Like
Yeah.
if there's a lot of people, then that 150 can, right? And I mean, you'll know.
Does that make sense though? Cap available funds? That sounds wordy.
Doesn't sound right to me.
It doesn't sound right. Yeah, cap, I think just cap number of,
Or set.
oh yeah,
You can set available funds. I mean,
Set.
that's a meeting thing, right? You'll have to
well, I
set.
guess. I think cap number of exemptions,
No, but
so you're
exemptions,
capping them because of, cap number of exemptions to control,
Lost
revenue.
revenue.
yeah.
yeah, but you're gonna have to set a dollar amount. Because if you're just like,
Yes, set, okay, set number.
Well, we have to set a lot of things that we're still in the beginning
number of-
workings.
Yeah.
How
this
about just
is-
set
we-
number
we
of
got-
exemptions? How about this, set number of exemptions to control revenue
Yeah.
loss?
Yeah.
Lost revenue.
There you go.
I don't know, so in part of your proposal, that means you're gonna set like the number of exemptions. What you really are is you're gonna set the total dollar amount, right? is what you're really doing. So you're gonna say like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna have that control, like, if we have 50 applications there, I don't know if Ross is gonna do the calculator and say, well, this pushes it over the $300,000 mark. Like, I know what you're saying. We have a set number. We want to kind of keep to that number.
no, I think we can't go over that number.
Yeah.
That's the point of the limit, right?
That
But
number
if
of
it-
exemptions. I mean,
That can always be reviewed again, maybe next year. Doesn't
yeah,
have to be set in
No,
stone
but
forever.
no, so
yeah. I see what you're saying.
the proposal to the proposal to the state has to be set, right?
Yeah. I know what you're
mean-
saying, Jeremy. I'll try to, maybe offline, we'll work on how to phrase that. I know what you're saying.
You
Like, if
know,
we say,
we're not
okay,
gonna get
we're
through
prepared to
anything
lose
else.
$300,000 a year,
We're not going to get through anything else if we have to wordsmith. I think
Yeah,
I
okay.
think what you got there is good,
Okay,
and we've given you our opinions on this.
okay. All right.
Because we really have two more to go through here.
Yeah. Okay, quickly.
An hour and a half, guy.
All right. Real estate transfer fee to support affordable and workforce housing. So this is to establish a sustainable revenue source for the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust Fund. A real estate transfer fee, the fee would be an effective, efficient, and equitable tool for raising necessary revenues to support affordable housing in Great Barrington. A fee between 0.5% and 2% would be applied to certain types of real estate transactions. Certain types of transactions can include properties sold above a certain percentage of the median sale price for single-family homes in Great Barrington. For example, 150%. Properties sold in Great Barrington over a certain dollar amount. For example, homes sold over $1 million. The fee could be split between buyer and seller or paid only by the buyer or by the seller. Exemptions can be added and adopted in the future. Exemptions could include transfers between family members, transfers for affordable housing uses, transfers of convenience or made as gifts, transfers involving vulnerable populations.
Good to me.
Fee-generated revenue would be deposited annually in the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust Fund to replenish it.
Here.
The money would then be used to provide rental and home ownership opportunities that are affordable to low and moderate income households in Great Barrington. Public forums would engage residents to determine if a transfer fee is suitable for the community.
Mm.
If determined suitable, then the exemptions, terms, and conditions based on local prices and market conditions would be determined. Discussion topics: goals and expectations, what should be taxed, who should pay the fee, what percentage, what exemptions should be included, and the wording of the home rule petition.
Mhm.
The real estate transfer fee is supported by other municipalities. Nantucket, Provincetown, Chatham, and Somerville have filed transfer fee home rule petitions. Amherst, Northampton, and others are working towards filing. A bill has also been filed, H37 and S868, that would allow communities to opt in without filing special acts. I can go over this, but this is if we were to do it by percentage. So if certain properties that were sold over the median sale price for a single family home were to have this fee applied, I had worked with Ross just to get a sense of how that would work. So what he did was he provided a worksheet of everything that had been sold during the fiscal year. He marked off what was I'm just telling you guys so you can read this.
Mhm.
He marked off what the median was, in that year, which in this case was 475. And then we just went down, we sorted this and we went down and kind of marked off, okay, what's the 150% tile? So that would be, in this case, it was 712,000. What's the 200% centile of the single family home media place? So that was kind of, putting the benchmarks, so to speak, of anything from that point down would be in the net of having a transfer fee applied. So that was kind of a way to give us a sense of if this transfer fee was applied to a certain percentage over the single family home sale price, that's how it would be calculated. The assessor would go through this worksheet. And what's nice with this way is that you get a sense of the benchmark, and you also get a sense of what that fee would generate in revenue to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund each year. So in this case, through some calculation, oops. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Through some calculation, I won't show this too long, but you're able to figure out what the actual amount was of homes that sold over a certain percent. And in this case, let's say the revenue generated was $15 million for anything that was sold 200% over the median. And you could see how much that might generate in revenue to the town if that was enacted. So it's kind of a messy calculation, but it's just
So what you're showing there is at the 200%, if we adopted the 200% and the 2% transfer tax, that would yield 300, that would have yielded 308,000 in 2022.
Exactly. Yep. That's how that would work. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good as numbers.
Yeah.
Lee, I have a question about the slide.
Yeah. Do you want me to finish or do you want me to stop? Hello?
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
finished. Sorry.
Okay. It's not too, hopefully it's not too long.
It's not too long.
Yeah. And this is just to give what some of the other towns are doing. So, and I just added this for this discussion, but in Northampton, it's showing the public input that they started working with. This is in 2021 or 2021. And the transfer fee for affordable housing, this is the piece of legislation that I think Senator Joanne Comerford is pushing forward that would push for this in terms of letting municipalities go ahead and opt into this without having to file a home rule petition. So this is just an example of what's going on. And some of the legislation that has been filed. You can see Cambridge, real estate transfer fee. Nantucket, the transfer fee is designed, for affordable and workforce housing, and Joanne Comerford's legislation. Similar proposed next steps, public input, the town assessor presents, invite Northampton or Nantucket to address the select board, draft the home rule petition and town meeting vote. So that's a lot, but the proposal really in a nutshell is trying to provide revenue for affordable housing. So the first one is to incentivize landlords, but this is actually, we need money to build housing. We need money to fund our programs. So where do we get that money? So that's what this angle is, okay, let's come up with a way to actually get money, so this is very, very different from the first proposal, but it provides a revenue source. So the tricky part really is, at what point do we apply this fee? So do we set a number? And it's interesting, one developer who I spoke with, they said, immediately if you set a median, if you say 120 percentile or 200 percentile, people are going to quickly do the math in their homes and say, hey, that includes me, and I've put all this money into my renovation. If I sell my house, why should I have to pay extra? Whereas if you have a kind of magical number similar to the millionaire's tax that you might hear about in legislation, if you say, okay, any home over $1 million, would have to pay this 1%, let's say, then it might be easier for residents to kind of really grasp, saying, okay, well, I can handle that. Anything, sold over $1 million, there's 2%, added on in terms of a transfer fee, and that 2% goes to helping the community build and support affordable housing. So that might be more bite size to put forward. So now this is taking this has a lot of traction right now in the legislature. So there's many towns, going through the similar process that we're doing, starting the discussion. Some have already, filed bills. Some are just starting to look at it. So again, there's a precedent set. We have other towns to rely on to see, what their experience is, and we can right size it, so we can say, we're comfortable with this, number one, or we're not. And number two is, how much money would be how much money are we trying to aim for to replenish the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? So, $300,000, is that, the amount that would be suitable to have every year for the trust to work with? So any thoughts?
Okay. I think we should present it and see how it flies. I think this actually could be a harder sell than the
I think so, yeah.
Tax exemption, but
For sure. Yeah. Immediately we'll have the realtors
mhm.
not
Yeah.
enthusiastic. But
And
I keep hearing calls about we need to build more affordable housing. And to Jeremy's point, it's not really the town. I mean, that's kind of other organizations doing that. But if the town can help, if we can, we have an affordable housing trust fund that, needs money. So, I mean, in the very least, we fund that through the CPC right now. So this will be another mechanism to replenish that.
That would be great if we could use the funds.
Yeah.
300,000 will get you one place maybe, right? So
Yeah, but
this is more than we have. But
it could help support programs. So,
Yeah.
there's other programs that the rental assistance fund, I mean, there's a lot of programs that could support, we could, with some of the, I don't know, depends if you want to go in towards seniors or.
I mean, maybe the Affordable Housing Trust could hire somebody then who could go out and get grants or get other funds too, because they're stretched with volunteers.
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't just build units, but it supports it. But I think it's an important revenue source.
Yeah, I think it's a direct.
Yeah, they need a lot of revenue sources.
Yeah.
And this could be one. I mean, I wonder about if setting the I don't know, the amount is better than the mean. I mean, the ones that are going through Boston they're saying like either for the state or for would it be the region that you could choose in that, but not necessarily. This was just the town, right? The town's numbers. Yeah. So that was my one question about that slide. It's like, do we want to, but if we, and do those options is what's going through, because I wonder if like, how does home rule work when then if the state were to pass a law after that, it reverts to the state, right?
Not necessarily.
Well,
not necessarily.
Yeah, the local, yeah.
If you have a local home rule, that by definition trumps the state, but it depends on what they put in the state bill, though.
Exactly.
They could invalidate everything, but I doubt if they will.
I mean, from what I can see right now, it's pretty open-ended. It's allowing municipalities to go between 0.5% and 2%, and for them to determine locally if it's the seller or the buyer. So it's really just kind of giving
flexible,
the mechanism more so. It's not dictating the specifics of it. So, yeah.
The Tommy's growling.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So how does this, any thoughts, or do
Go
you
for
want
it.
just kind of, okay, go for it. So,
Do we want to suggest any of those kinds of answers, or do we want to just leave it open-ended for the conversation to happen? Because there's a lot of like ways you can adjust it, right?
yeah,
Half that.
Yeah, but
is-
see, I think that we have to get past this next meeting, Jeremy, and then if there's a general, okay, let's go forward with this, then we can have a meeting that dives into those details.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess, really we should talk about what we expect, what our hopes and expectations are from this meeting on Monday. Do we want a vote of, hey, this is a concept that we feel that, we should put more further study into? Yes.
Yeah.
And then is that what we're happy with?
So we want to say go or kill it.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really fall into kind of, if it's zoning or planning board, it's kind of a general ordinance, but it's basically giving the go ahead, saying, hey, this is worth exploring and spending some time on it. And who drives that? That's going to be a question. I mean, does the select board do it? Do we then, push forward with a deeper dive and answer some of these questions? Is this something for town staff? I mean, it's quite a lot of work that's gone into this. Do we want to just keep focusing on just these two, or hand it off to another board?
No, we don't think we want to do that.
Well,
I think
it
just
doesn't,
getting a good review from the select board, I don't think we necessarily have to have them say yes or no at that point, but to listen and to give us maybe a little more guidance and or say, yes, well, you're right. Yes, this is fine.
Yeah. I just don't want it to die a death like that. Everyone says, hey, this is great, and then it just sits there. So someone's going to have to really drive the public input sessions and, do the research. And should that be us, or should that be town staff, or should that be because if they all say, hey, this is great, and there's some really good comments, then do we take on the comments and this is what we do for the next year?
Maybe, or maybe we could, or we could also decide whether or not we need to meet it out to the town, if you will, I guess, right?
I mean, it's an interesting thing. This is something, because when you go through that list, there's a lot of things that staff already are doing.
Mhm.
And there's, things that other boards and committees are doing, but, and so when you are determining what the purpose of this subcommittee is, maybe that's the purpose.
Mhm.
So, I mean, getting that kind of direction as well, right? Like
Mhm.
what the boards.
Yeah, if
what
we're going in the right direction.
this-
yes.
Okay. So I guess the thought is, and I'll wrap this up very quickly. And I know that Vivian's been on. So
Yeah, I'd
thank
like to
you.
see.
Yeah,
Vivian's
we're not going to
presentation.
cut off before
No,
Vivian.
no.
Back. So Vivian, you've been very patient. So just one thing about this presentation, the thought is that we open up with this new worksheet. And Malcolm, do you want to present that and just kind of give an
Sure.
overview of what we've been working on? And Jeremy and Garfield, you guys can come Monday, right?
Yep.
Okay. So maybe start with Malcolm, and then I could just go through the two presentations, and
Yep.
then we open it up to the floor. Do you think we should do one by one, because they're so different? So we should probably just start with one, take comments, get a general sense of yay or nay, and then do the other one. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's, Vivian, I know that you've been patiently waiting. I sent the subcommittee Vivian's slides, and I have not had a chance to take a look. Vivian, if you want to jump on and just quickly walk us through.
Can you share it?
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I asked Lee if she would share the slides
Yeah.
as I talk.
I'll share it. Yeah.
I'll give prompts for each one. There are only 9 slides,
Okay.
but it helps me to concentrate on what I say rather than
Okay.
having to start with the computer. So the first slide.
Okay. One sec.
Also, for anyone who's who's watching online, thank you. Okay, This is about the town of Great Barrington 41A, senior tax deferral for low and moderate income, long-term residents age 65 or older. Let me, hold on a second, I'm having problems here with, okay. The presentation seeks your subcommittee's recommendation for an update in the qualifying income and interest rate for the senior tax deferral that was passed overwhelmingly by town meeting in 2022. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, I got ahead of you. The land acknowledgement.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it all. I just
Yeah.
put an excerpt there, and I want to mention for context and inspiration, the Mohican Nation, indigenous people who lived in this region for thousands of years, valued and still value. They're still here. They're not in our area, but they're in Wisconsin. They still value and respect elders as vital participants in the community. And they also prioritized education, not in schools, but via teaching by example. Next slide, please. So while supporting education of our young people, we also need to recognize how older residents could be concerned about the impact on property taxes of rising school district expenditures, how to achieve our educational objectives in a way that doesn't divide the community. Next slide, please.
Am I on the right slides?
I'm not watching you.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
the current slide should be the aerial view of the school campus, right? That's the
Oh.
current.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the next slide is the screenshot from the Boston Globe.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we can update the senior tax deferral passed by town meeting last year. As indicated by the Boston Globe, quote, if you're over 65, here's one of the best kept secrets in Massachusetts, end quote. And that's also the case in Great Barrington. Even though it was passed overwhelmingly by town meeting, it's still relatively unknown in our town. And one problem is that few people apply because it's not well known. And also many people are excluded when the maximum qualifying income for deferral is set below 80% of the area median income, which you were talking about extensively in terms of the other programs. So this is currently way below that. It's not up to date from that matter, from that perspective. So next slide, please. That would be the Berkshire Eagle screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? You got it? Okay. And they did an article in March 2021, almost 2 years ago, saying amid rising home values, Great Barrington to eye tax deferrals for seniors. This was the first presentation to the select board on this topic. And it covered how a big jump in real estate valuations and property taxes in recent years, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, is squeezing longtime older residents whose income has declined in retirement for the most part. Next slide, please. Another Berkshire Eagle screenshot. This was an editorial where the editors endorsed making the senior tax deferral more accessible to low and moderate income seniors so that we're not financially punished and sometimes forced to sell our homes due to property tax pressures. The editorial said, our opinion, regional growth shouldn't leave anyone behind. Next slide, please. Okay. To be the benefits of the senior tax deferral and making it more accessible. Very briefly, there's no cost to taxpayers. You don't have to deal with any of the issues that on these other more ambitious programs we're dealing with. It's not an exemption, and so there's no us versus them. It's just a deferral of the amount that will be paid later. And it's secure for the town. They get a lien on the deed for anyone who defers their taxes, which ensures repayment plus interest payment. And thirdly, it's a safety net. So senior residents can stay in their homes if they have unexpected expenses or illness or all sorts of things that happen, you know, without prediction. And so it's kind of like a way of ensuring that we have this to lean on, upon L-E-A-N, lean on, to rely on in case we need to. And the community benefits too, not only the elders and their families, but neighborhoods and property values. That way, if seniors have to sell their homes, we know what happens to who buys them and what happens to property valuations as a result, and also the risk of more short-term rentals. Although, of course, some of that has been hopefully minimized. Okay, next slide, please. And this is based on state law, originally passed about 50 years ago, which requires municipalities to offer senior tax deferral programs. The maximum qualifying income needs to be updated to current income levels and interest rates, as many other Massachusetts towns have done. For example, Hingham and Norwell are two towns with populations close to Great Barrington, who set the maximum qualifying income at $61,000 and $62,000 respectively. Hingham charges 1% interest and Norwell charges 2% on deferred taxes. Among towns which I've surveyed, and then I can present more details to the select board, but among towns with the most active programs, interest charges range from 0.25% to 4%. And as I said, I'd be glad to provide more information on that, which I didn't want to get into complexities now. And on the second point here, in terms of community support, senior tax deferral proposal that was approved by town meeting was previously recommended by the select board, which it had to be, and the finance committee, which went over it in 4 separate meetings. We really delved into the details. And then also the Council on Aging, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, and the Select Board and Planning Board Housing Subcommittee, as some of you may remember, all reviewed this policy and recommended it for consideration by town meeting. So another benefit, actually, but it also shows the community involvement, is that it doesn't have to go through town meeting anymore. The Select Board can revise income levels and interest rates yearly. It's a very flexible program. And next slide, the final slide, please. So the proposed updates for fiscal year 2024, they would go into effect at the beginning next July, would be raising the maximum qualifying annual income from the current level of $40,000 to $50,000 or $60,000 per household. So that means in most towns, although there are a few exceptions to that, most towns have the same rate no matter how many people are in the household, whether it's a single or a couple, it's the same rate. And that's why 50 or 60 would be relevant, because it's about 80% of the area median income, which is what HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Programs for assisted housing, set for 1 or 2 person households. So that would be the kind of the way we would recommend these new rates. And then for the maximum annual interest rate, it's a question of going down just from 5% to 4%. 2 reasons for that. As I mentioned, the towns that actually do get participation in this program, the maximum rate that they're charging is currently 4%, and some much lower than that. And if we look at our local milieu financial guidelines, local banks are offering interest rates on certificates of deposits, which get the best rates, and around 4% is maximum that you can get. Most of the interest rates are much lower than that, but I'm not suggesting that for the for the senior tax deferral. So considering the fact that this is already established program and the problem is just getting more people on board, currently only a few applied and only one was approved as of what our assessor Ross Favori said a couple of weeks ago when I spoke to him. Yeah, we're just eager to get this better known, but to do it in a way that really makes it more accessible. And I'd ask the committee to consider recommending that for consideration by the select board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. I had a question because I talked to Ross about the one person that took this up. What do we, for people that you know, show a low income but have substantial savings or retirement you know, policies, etc. How does this, you know, does this weed out people that, you know, are actually sitting on quite a substantial amount of money in savings but show, you know, a low income, or how does this work?
Well, if they really have a lot of savings, that would show up in their income statement in terms of having to declare interest and dividends for they have to submit their tax returns, and the tax returns, you know, require interest and dividend income. So if there's substantial savings, it would show up on the income level. And this is not a welfare program. This is not a low income subsidy. This is for low and moderate income people. And because people who worked all their lives and had income to buy houses, which have now appreciated a great deal in value, although that value is on paper, it's not money that they can put in the bank or pay their property taxes with. Those people often have greatly reduced incomes because they're retired or they have health challenges and can't work anymore. So it does show up because they have to submit their income taxes, and they have to renew it every year. I mean, they can't just, you know, arrange things so that one year their income looks very low or very moderate. They have to, in order to get the deferral, they have to go through the full application process every year.
Okay. Jeremy, you're muted.
Do you think that's a real risk that people with real money are going to want to do this? Because it puts a lien on the, it puts a lien on their home. I mean, I guess you could say, I mean, I guess if the amount of money that they save in taxes, they can really use that to, I mean, I guess the only advantage is you could use that cash to then make money at a higher rate than whatever, 4%. So if you think that's a real thing, I mean, I would think, I don't know.
You know, that, believe me, that question was raised when we went over this with the finance committee originally, because it was something completely new and people did not have any idea. No one could know how it was going to be used in Great Barrington. But if that was the case, I think we would have seen it already, and only basically one person has qualified since this was passed a town meeting last year. So it's not like people are going to be using this as kind of a financial backdoor or something like that. And I don't think lowering it by 1% is going to suddenly bring on an influx of people who have that in mind. As you pointed out, you have to put a lien on your house. So this is not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally, I think the benefit is, yeah, and that kind of risk, I think, you know, I mean, it's shameful, and so I don't think it's really going to be. I don't know.
There are all these other towns who have done it. I mean, and even a city such as Newton, which has about 85,000 people and who set their interest rate in recent years, it's gone up slightly, I think, to above 1% now, but it used to be set at like something like 1/4 of 1%. And they had they had like 65 people using this tax deferral in a city of 85,000 people. So if you think we're 1/10 of that, if we get 6 people, as a matter of fact, the town of Norwell, which has a little bit above 10,000 people, that's exactly what they had. They get about 6 to 10 people per year doing that. And if you look at any of these other towns, as I said, I went through that with the finance committee, and I can update that, but they're
Okay.
getting, between a half a dozen people to maybe 20 people participating, but they have, 5-10 times the population that we do.
Okay,
So
thank you
proportion.
very much. So
We're
Vivian,
not-
I'm gonna let thank you so much for your presentation. I'm gonna let the subcommittee talk real quick because we have to figure out how this is gonna work. If we work this in on Monday, but thank you very much. So subcommittee members, this is, another large topic to discuss. Is this something that we should save for another standalone meeting to bring to the select board? Because, to have 3 hefty proposals might be a little bit too much with the planning board there. So
Well,
I don't want to kind of overwhelm them. And I think it deserves obviously a lot of consideration, but I don't want to rush it and have it,
Lee, I think the first 2 items that you were presenting are brand new.
yeah,
I think what Vivian is actually presenting should go right to the select board, because it's really, it's not a question of a new program. It's a question
Yeah,
of revising our program to make it more effective.
yeah.
Yep.
I think that-
And I would just take it right to the select board, because the select board is the body that can act on it.
I believe what Vivian might be wanting is our blessing. So,
Well, she's got my blessing. But
That's my
Yeah.
blessing.
so we could, give our blessing here
Yeah.
and say, we recommend this to, for further study.
Yeah.
to the Select board. And
But-
she could
Yeah.
go to the select board with
Is
that.
there-
Yeah, why don't we can mention it on Monday.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
That we want the
that's
select board to look
yeah.
at.
And then,
It-
they can work in Vivian to present it or how they want to proceed.
is it worth mentioning that that bring it up and that we're in support of this? And because I mean,
Yes.
that's it's in the select board's purview to review these things each year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we could mention it, when Malcolm, when you're going through the worksheet, you could say, well, this is one item that, we feel that.
It's right.
Yep.
Vivian's ready to present it to the board, and we endorse it.
Yeah, okay.
And
All right.
depending on the value of some people's homes, I mean, 40,000 is not a lot of money to run a household on if you're paying a significant amount in property tax.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know plenty of people whose property taxes sound like rents that we're talking about in the affordable level.
Yeah.
And so, it's like they're paying rent. And so
Okay.
that, I mean, this might be something real. I mean, 40,000 is just, it's tough to make it work at that.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So wrapping it up very quickly, we'll move forward with Monday. Everyone's going to be attending. Do you want us try to set up the next meeting, or is it a bit too much right now?
Much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel Garfield's stomach. Okay, so I'll just send out kind of a email and figure out a doodle poll, whatever. And, yeah, and what I'll do is I'll send out another kind of just the slides, and if there's any notes that you guys want to send me individually, I can incorporate them. And
I'll send you a revised table,
excellent. Okay.
the worksheet.
Okay. So let's have subcommittee time. Anyone else want to say any couple words?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay. Malcolm?
Yep, all
Jeremy?
good.
All right. Media time and citizen speak. Anyone that hasn't spoken want to say anything? No, media. Okay. All right. So a move to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
second.
All right, second. All right. Thank you all. We're adjourning the meeting, and I'm
So
gonna
much.
end this. And thanks for a long meeting, but I think we did a great job. So
Yeah, we did a good job.
awesome.
Good
All right.
job.
Thank you guys. Bye.